This morning, we read Parshat Vayakhel, which recounts the details of the building of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the portable sanctuary which served as our ancestors' center of worship as they wandered through the wilderness for 40 years. And if the content of this morning's Torah portion seems familiar to you, it should, because we read an almost identical description of the building of the Mishkan just a couple of weeks ago in Parshat Truma and Parshat Tetzaveh and a bit in Parshat Kitisa. And the Torah is usually very concise with its language. So the question is raised, why did the text need to repeat the instructions about the building of the tabernacle? Was it really necessary to have all of these details given twice? And there are many answers given to that question by different commentators throughout Jewish history. Nachmanides, the great 13th century sage, says that the first set of instructions about the building of the Mishkan were given before the incident of the golden calf, and the second set of instructions about the building of the Mishkan were given after the incident of the golden calf. And if our covenant with God was renewed after the incident of the calf, then we needed to receive the instructions about the Mishkan a second time. That's a nice explanation. I'm not sure I fully buy it, but it's a nice explanation. With all due respect to Nachmanides, I think the best answer to the question of why the instructions about the building of the tabernacle are given twice is the simplest answer. The Torah is trying to teach us a lesson not only about what it means to be Jewish, but about what it means to be a human being and what it means to live in the world. Building is hard. Building things is really hard. Sometimes it's so hard that you need to actually be given the instructions twice. But as I learned in Israel this past week, as difficult as it is to build, that's how easy it is to destroy. It can take many, many years to build something meaningful, something beautiful. But the destruction of that very same thing can happen in the blink of an eye. This past week, I was in Israel on a Temple Beth Shalom solidarity mission with 18 remarkable TBS members, and we were there to bear witness. We were there to let our Israeli brothers and sisters know that we love them and support them, and we were there to volunteer, to give back to our country, which is in such desperate need at this critical juncture in Jewish history. And I'm not going to recount every detail of the trip this morning. You'll have ample opportunity to hear from those who are on the trip in the coming weeks. But I do want to focus on one particular day of our trip. On Wednesday, we spent the day in Otef Aza, in the Gaza envelope, where all of the carnage of October 7th played out. We visited Ofakim, our sister community through the Greater Metro West Federation, which lost 53 people on October 7th. We visited the site of the Nova Music Festival, a festival which was billed as a celebration of friends, love, and infinite freedom, and where 364 young Israelis were killed on October 7th. And we spent the majority of that day at Kibbutz Kfar Aza, a kibbutz just about 1 mile from the border of the Gaza Strip. Kfar Aza is a community that was absolutely decimated by Hamas on October 7th, and it is a place that will never, ever be the same. And if you've ever wondered what it must have been like to have been in Poland in the wake of the Chmelnytsky massacres, or to have been in Kishinev after its great pogrom, or to have been in any Jewish town in Germany or Austria following Kristallnacht, all you need to do is walk through the ruins of Kibbutz Kfar Aza. Because as you walk through that kibbutz, it feels exactly like you are walking through a scene taken from the darkest pages of Jewish history. We were led through the kibbutz by a woman named Chen, who grew up on Kfar Aza and has lived on that kibbutz for her entire life. Chen is so proud of what her kibbutz has accomplished. When the founders of Kfar Aza established the community in 1951, the land was arid desert. There was nothing there. But over the course of 72 years, they were able to transform that land into a beautiful, flourishing green oasis, the beautiful kibbutz it is today. And Chen was particularly proud of the relationship that the members of her community had built with their Palestinian neighbors over the course of many decades. She told us that when she was growing up, the highlight of her summer every year was when a bus would pick up all the school-aged children from the kibbutz and take them to spend the day at the beach in Gaza. She looked forward to it every summer. And she was so proud of the fact that Palestinians from Gaza used to work on her kibbutz every day because it meant that her community was helping those Gazans to make a living. As she said to us, we were neighbors. You don't always like your neighbors, but you can always find a way to make it work. You find a way to live together. It took over 70 years to build Kibbutz Kfar Aza, 70 years to create a culture of prosperity, of tolerance, and of peace just a mile from the border of Gaza. But it took one morning, one single morning, the morning of October 7th, to destroy it all. As Chen walked us through the ruins of the kibbutz, we saw that the houses were spray painted with the number 4, and that meant that each home had been scanned 4 times by the IDF in the days following October 7th. The first scan was to check for terrorists, to ensure that no one who had crossed over from Gaza on that terrible morning was still hiding in any of the homes. The second scan was for explosives, grenades, pipe bombs, all kinds of booby traps that Hamas terrorists left behind to kill as many people as they possibly could. Weeks after October 7th, people were still finding hand grenades in refrigerators and fruit baskets in their kitchens, and Chen told us that on Kibbutz Kfar Aza, someone even found a hand grenade in their toilet. The third scan was to check for bodies. And the fourth scan was done by Zaka, an Orthodox organization that retrieves human remains from sites of terror attacks and cleans and prepares them for burial according to Jewish law. And if there's a red dot found on one of the homes, it means that there were bodies found in that house. And there are many, many homes at Kibbutz Kfar Aza with red dots. Chen showed us the house where her closest friend from kindergarten was killed. She showed us where Ophir Liebstein, the mayor of the Shar HaNegev Regional Council, was killed. She showed us where Hadar and Itai Berdichevsky, the parent of 10-month-old twins, were killed. Miraculously, somehow, and you may have heard this story, the twins survived. They were saved by their aunt and uncle, Maya and Devir, who also lived on the kibbutz. She showed us where her dear, dear friend, who was an expert in trauma therapy and who had worked with children recovering from trauma in the Gaza region, was killed along with her 2 dogs. And she had used those dogs in her therapy sessions because some of the children she worked with were so deeply traumatized that they would only open up to her if the dogs were there. And in a tragic, ironic twist, now at the time when they're needed most, they're gone. Chen showed us homes from which many of the 19 hostages who were kidnapped from Kfar Aza were taken. All of the homes, every home we saw in the kibbutz, was riddled with bullets, or had been partially destroyed by RPG missiles, or had been very, very badly burned. It was like walking through a living nightmare. It was literally walking through the aftermath of a pogrom. But the most disturbing part of that day for me wasn't what we witnessed. It was what Chen said to us just before we left Kfar Aza that day. She said, I grew up here. My children lived here. I love this kibbutz with all my heart and all my soul, and I know that there's no future here. We have lived under rocket fire for so many years, and then October 7th happened. 63 members of my kibbutz were killed, 19 were taken hostage, 5 are still in captivity in Gaza. This is not a place for children. Why did the Torah repeat the instructions about the building of the Mishkan? Because God wanted our ancestors to understand just how hard it is to build something. It takes years of insight, of effort, of sacrifice, and of care to successfully build a community, a culture, a society, but it takes almost no time at all to tear it all down. Kibbutz Kfar Aza took 72 years to build and one single morning to destroy. But I want to frame it slightly differently. I think another way you can look at it is that the essence of the Jewish people is building. The instructions to build the tabernacle are given to us twice because that's what Jews do. We build. We built the tabernacle in the wilderness. We built 2 temples in Jerusalem. And after 2,000 years of exile, we built a remarkable Jewish society in the land of Israel, the likes of which the world has never seen. And if Kibbutz Kfar Aza itself will never be rebuilt, the country is already well on its way to rebuilding post-October 7th. This morning's parasha is called Vayakel, which means, and he gathered. And it's derived from the same root as the word Kehillah, which means community, because only together could the community build the tabernacle. And so too it is today in Israel. Together, the community will rebuild so that it will be stronger and more resilient than it has ever been before. Vayakel Moshe et kol adat bnei Yisrael, and Moses brought all the people of Israel together to build the Mishkan. And at this extremely difficult but profoundly important moment in Jewish history, the people of Israel are once again coming together to continue the remarkable project of building Medinat Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom. We rise for Chatzi Kaddish, page 428.